I was walking through the supermarket with Gran Betty last week when she suddenly stopped in the fruit and veg aisle. She picked up a red pepper, turned it over slowly in her hand, and stared at the price label. £2.80. Gran Betty squinted at it like it had personally offended her. Then she looked at me and said, "Darling, back in my day that would have bought the whole crate and the petrol to drive it home." She placed the pepper back very gently, like it was a luxury watch, and shook her head. Never pay luxury prices for something the earth gives away for free. Now here's something most people don't realize. Gran Betty hasn't paid full supermarket prices for vegetables in years. Last year alone, she cut more than £1,200 from her grocery bill. And she did it using a trick most people walk past every single day without even noticing. A trick that's quietly helping neighborhoods across the country fight back against grocery inflation in 2026. Because let's be honest, food prices have gone a little bit mad. Those bags of potatoes look the same size on the shelf, but when you get home, you realize you paid £5.20 for fewer potatoes than last month. Salad leaves are suddenly treated like luxury goods. And herbs. Don't even get Gran Betty started on herbs. The other day, she picked up one of those tiny supermarket packets and nearly laughed out loud. £1.50 for a handful of leaves, she said. That's not groceries, that's a garnish with a mortgage. Most people sigh, tap their card, and complain on the way out. Gran Betty does something very different. She grows her way around inflation. But the funny thing is, when I first heard about it, I imagined a huge countryside garden. I pictured muddy boots, endless digging, and vegetables that looked nothing like the ones in the supermarket. Gran Betty laughed when I told her that. "Oh, darling," she said, "this isn't farming. This is strategy." Because her real secret isn't land. It's community. A few years ago, Gran Betty noticed something most people ignored completely. Small bits of forgotten council land, scrubby green spaces, quiet patches that nobody seemed to be using. Instead of complaining about grocery prices, she knocked on a few neighbors' doors and said something simple. If the land is sitting idle, we might as well put it to work. That one sentence started something remarkable. Soon, a small group of neighbors were clearing weeds, building raised beds, and planting their first crops. That little forgotten patch of land slowly transformed into the neighborhood allotment. And today, that same patch produces crates of vegetables every single season. Potatoes, beans, squash, courgettes, salad greens, herbs, enough to feed dozens of households. Gran Betty loves to say, inflation hates a good harvest. But the allotment isn't just about saving money. Gran Betty says it changed her life in ways she never expected. One afternoon, we were sitting on a wooden bench at the edge of the allotment, watching bees drift lazily between the flowers. Gran Betty looked across the rows of vegetables and smiled. "You know, darling," she said, "this little patch of soil is the best investment I've ever made." I asked her why. She leaned back and counted on her fingers. "First, it pays me in food. Second, it pays me in health. Third, it pays me in friendships." Then she added one of her famous one-liners. "A garden is the only place where you can get a workout, a grocery shop, and a therapy session all at the same time." Gran Betty spends about 10 hours a month at the allotment. 10 hours. That small amount of time saves her more than £1,200 a year in groceries. But the health benefits are just as powerful. Gardening keeps her moving. She bends, stretches, lifts watering cans, pushes wheelbarrows, and walks between the beds. Fresh air, sunlight, movement. My gym membership is called a wheelbarrow. People pay £40 a month to walk on a treadmill indoors. Meanwhile, I'm outside growing potatoes and saving money. Gran Betty believes gardening keeps her young. If you want a long life, she says, plant long vegetables. But the allotment gives her something even more important: purpose. Every morning she wakes up excited to see what's growing. New shoots, ripe tomatoes, bees visiting the flowers. She often tells me, watching things grow reminds you that life is still moving forward. And then there are the friendships. Gran Betty calls the allotment the original social media. No passwords, she says. Just muddy boots and good conversation. Neighbours share tools. They swap vegetables. They help each other build beds and fix fences. One time a pumpkin grew so enormous that 3 neighbours had to carry it home together. Gran Betty laughed for days about that pumpkin. But here's where the story gets even better. I thought the garden was the whole trick. Gran Betty shook her head. Oh no, darling, she said. That's only half the system. Because Gran Betty hasn't bought seeds from a shop in years. She's part of a seed swap network. One afternoon, she was drying tomato seeds on kitchen paper when she explained it to me. Why give a corporation £4.99 for seeds when your neighbour already has 1,000 sitting inside a tomato? Seeds get traded, cuttings get shared, plants multiply, money stays in people's pockets. Gran Betty calls seeds the most underrated investment in the world. Seeds, she says, are the only investment that multiplies while you sleep. Now, another thing that makes Gran Betty successful is that she doesn't grow random things. She grows what she calls inflation busters, crops that replace the most expensive items on a grocery bill. Potatoes for calories, beans for protein, squash because it stores for months, salad leaves because shops charge a fortune for them. Her rule is beautifully simple. If it's expensive in the shop, grow it. Think about the last time you bought herbs. That tiny plastic packet probably cost around £1.50 and lasted 2 meals. Gran Betty grows a year's supply in one pot. Then she always adds another one-liner. Supermarkets sell convenience. Gardens sell independence. Now here's something Gran Betty always reminds people. Not everyone has a garden pet, she says, but everyone has a window. Gran Betty loves helping people who live in flats grow food. Her first tip is the windowsill herb garden. Basil, mint, parsley, coriander, all of them grow beautifully indoors. One pot of herbs, she says, can quietly save you more than £100 a year. Her second trick is what she calls the salad bowl garden. Instead of buying expensive bags of salad leaves every week, she grows lettuce and rocket in shallow containers. You simply cut what you need. The leaves grow back again. Gran Betty laughs every time she harvests a handful. Imagine paying £2 for a bag of leaves when they're trying to grow themselves for free. Her third trick is vertical growing. If you run out of ground, she says, start using the walls. Hanging baskets, balcony railing planters, stacked pots, even strawberries and cherry tomatoes thrive this way. Her fourth trick is wonderfully simple. Spring onions. Instead of throwing away the white root ends, Gran Betty places them in a small glass of water on the windowsill. Within days, they start growing again. You paid for them once, she says, so make them work over time. But when summer arrives and the harvest explodes, something magical happens in Gran Betty's kitchen. It becomes what she calls the preservation factory. Shelves fill with jars, pickled vegetables, dried herbs, frozen greens, homemade sauces. Gran Betty wastes absolutely nothing. Her fridge has a handwritten harvest calendar stuck to the door. It tells her exactly when crops grow naturally. Nature has seasons for a reason, she says. The supermarket just pretends it doesn't. That little calendar alone saves her from paying £5.60 for strawberries in January. One afternoon, Gran Betty brushed dirt off her gloves and said something that really stuck with me. "Darling, supermarkets sell food, but gardens grow freedom." Now, if Gran Betty's wisdom made you smile, or gave you even one idea to fight those ridiculous grocery prices, tap the like button so more people can discover her tips. Share this with someone who complains about food prices every week. And subscribe so you never miss another one of Gran Betty's clever ways to outsmart inflation. Gran Betty has an entire series where she shares simple tricks ordinary people can use to take back control of their money. In the next episode, she reveals the surprising habit that helped her slash her household bills even during the worst price hikes. So click the video on your screen right now and watch the rest of Gran Betty's Money Wisdom series. And remember what Gran Betty always says as she leaves the allotment. If the world gets expensive, grow something.